Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. This is great.
No problem, no problem. Well, let me do the intro. Welcome to What's My Thesis? I'm your host, Javier Proenza. Every week, my guests and I share the answers we found to the questions we have. Join us as we explore and expand our worldview through research and ask, What's my thesis? And today, my guest is Michelle Morby, also known as Morbid Fascination, or did you change it?
No, that
That's still your Instagram?
that's still my Instagram handle. I'm sticking to it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if you had changed it or if it would stay the same or what.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's just the handle.
I feel I just got out of the tub. Like well, now I just disclosed some things to my listeners. I took a hot bath and then a shower, and so I'm all squeaky clean, but I'm also like really relaxed. So this is gonna be perfect.
It's gonna be great. I love it. I love it.
So are you where are you situated? Are you in LA?
No, I'm in San Francisco.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how I ended up following you on Instagram, but I'm imagining. Do you know Peter? Peter Max
It is the
Lawrence?
Peter Max Lawrence connection.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right. I think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, did you go to what's the school over there called?
So Peter and I met at the San Francisco Art Institute,
Okay.
and Laura
Oh,
Laura
okay.
Ansel, who you also interviewed, also went to school there as well.
Hmm.
And so we all became friends at SFAI, as in, like, most of my West Coast existence stems
Hmm.
from that nexus of art school.
And you, so that implies that you're not originally from California.
No, I'm not originally from California. I grew up on the East Coast, but I was actually born in Argentina.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, my parents were expats living down there in the 70s, and then they came back up to Cambridge, Mass. And I lived there, and I lived in New York, and then high school was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
High school in Pittsburgh. What's Pittsburgh like?
Pittsburgh is the secret city. I know everyone's like, Pittsburgh. I'm like, you don't know. Let me tell you the secrets of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is an amazing art city, first and foremost because it's affordable. So you
Uh-huh.
can get magnificent studio space. So that's awesome.
I
It's
just dropped my mouse for everybody wondering what that noise was.
um, it has the only installation art museum in the world, the Mattress
Mm,
Factory, which is really fantastic. It's also home to the Warhol Museum, which
okay.
is, love him or hate him, it's a magnificent space to go to.
I
It's
don't have the energy to hate him.
I know. That's why I was like,
Why would you hate him?
oh,
What do people
people,
hate?
art school kids gotta hate
Yeah.
on something.
Like
So, like,
it's like
you know,
Picasso.
it's like Picasso, it's like Jeff Koons, it's like whatever,
Yeah.
people like to pile on whomever. Um, but yes, Pittsburgh has an incredible art scene, and it always has. And so going there in high school was really fantastic because the Carnegie Museum has an incredible permanent collection, but they also host the International, which is the second largest and oldest international art show next to the Venice Biennale. It's only 6 months younger than the Venice Biennale,
Mm.
but it's the only American Biennale.
How
Nobody knows about it.
how old is that then? You said? I just missed how old it is.
I couldn't tell you offhand, but it's only
Okay.
6 months younger than the Venice
So,
Biennale.
well, I'm just trying to figure out. I guess the Venice Biennale has probably been around for a while then, if that's
It,
if that's
yeah,
the yardstick.
that's the art. Yeah. So Andrew Carnegie was who really instigated bringing an international art show to Pittsburgh, so Americans could see the latest in European art. And so, because he was based in Pittsburgh, he brought it to Pittsburgh. And so, Pittsburgh has always had this really rich tradition of supporting of the arts and artists being there. There's always been a huge jazz scene
Mhm.
there. And so it's more than just the Rust Belt. There's a lot more
Right.
than just steel to Pittsburgh. So when this is all over, I highly recommend going and spending some time in Pittsburgh because it's fantastic.
Yeah, I actually haven't traveled enough throughout the United States. Though I did when I did the cross country trip from like Miami over here to Los
Okay.
Angeles. That was the
Mhm.
first time I touched more states there than I think I had been to at that point, right? So it's pretty crazy. Like there's just so much here, so it's always a good idea to ask and be like, what is it like? Because I also feel like for example, I was thinking about, it's really funny on the show The Good Place, where like they're constantly, there's a character that's from Jacksonville and all the jokes are like about how shitty Jacksonville is. But I'm sure that gets tedious if you're from Jacksonville, right?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, because, yeah, I think Pittsburgh and Cleveland, I think the joke was always comparing it to, like, America's armpit, which, like, what?
Yeah, that's
Um,
flattering.
but yeah, but I had never known about Pittsburgh, before I moved there, and I certainly wasn't thrilled when I first moved there because I was
Mhm,
living in New York City at the time, so I felt
mhm.
I was being banished
How old were
culturally.
you?
I was 15.
15? Okay.
Yeah, so I was just starting high school. Uh, but I quickly learned that I was mistaken, and I
Mhm.
fell deeply and madly in love with Pittsburgh.
And what kinda kid were you? Were you like a raver? Were you like a
No, I was definitely, I wore black all 4 years of high school.
okay.
Um, Out of convenience, really, I wasn't like a hardcore goth. I never knew how to do the makeup. I could never get the hair right. So I was like, I'm just gonna wear black.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I wore Doc Martens, and everyone thought it was really creepy, which I really enjoyed. And I spent most of my free time in the library. I was really tight with the librarian,
Mhm.
just sort of I just kinda slinked around the library a lot and smoked clove cigarettes and read a lot of
You were
Moliere.
fucking goth.
I mean,
If you smoke cloves, you're not adjacent.
very much so, very much so, but I was never into The Cure or The Smiths, but yes, definitely.
What were you?
What did I listen to?
Yeah,
God,
like
no,
Bauhaus and stuff like that?
no, I was, like, really kind of nerdy. I listened to a lot of classical.
Okay.
Um,
That's like uber goth.
yeah, I guess so. There was no other goths in my school, so it wasn't like we
Mhm.
were like a pack. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just I was this interloper, and everyone thought, because all the kids I went to high school with, they just thought that this was what a New Yorker was. Like they all wore black, and I was like, "It's true, we do. We all like my soul." So
That's
yeah,
hilarious. I
yeah,
remember meeting people from LA when I before I moved here and just being like, "Oh, they're so like their fashion being something about it that felt like it was really LA." And now that I'm here, I don't know what that is. Like I've become just desensitized to that, like that's just the aesthetic. Whereas like I was like, "Ooh, this is exotic," you know? There was definitely something that like read LA about the hipness. It was hip in a different way. This was when I was
yeah.
living in Bethesda, so it's like a different kind of world. A lot of like wannabe lawyers and stuff. Because I
So
was in college.
you grew up in Bethesda and then went to
No, I grew up
Florida
in Miami.
in
I
Miami.
in Italy, so yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and then,
where in Italy?
in Rome.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'm a big Romanista,
That is
but
fantastic.
thank
So,
you.
what are you doing here if you're Italian? Why didn't you go to
No, I'm
Italy?
actually not Italian, but
Oh,
I think that there's a lot of motivation. It's even, I mean, maybe before COVID to like move to the US because I don't think the economy is doing that was doing that great. I think maybe they're treating people better over there when they quarantine, but it's crazy out
mm,
here.
yeah.
So, what? So, do you have a topic today that you wanted to talk about?
Um, yeah, I did. I feel like I was kind of thinking about sort of the two camps that my art exists in and what I'm interested in exploring. Um, and what really flourished in art school, and I sort of carried that through, and has led to some really interesting experiences, was I went into SFAI originally as photo
Mhm.
and felt really sort of blunted by that program. And so I switched into new genres, which is like a free for all. So that's performance, installation, ephemera, all the really big ideas.
Mhm.
But you can't sell anything, but it's just really fun to do. Uh, so I got really into
I
it.
get really mad at schools that teach that.
Yeah,
and
I
charge
do
and charge
too.
an art. I mean, I understand the value of it in like in terms of art, but I get so mad. It's so pretentious to be teaching that shit to people that are paying like thousands of dollars. Like, and this is somebody that decided not to do it because that's what I would have been. Like I would have been just like you,
Well,
getting an MFA. Just one
well,
second. You can keep
yeah,
talking.
no, I feel like, the irresponsibility of art school, the most egregious thing I think art school is, besides the price tag, is the inability to teach artists that they are a small company
Yeah.
and they need to run themselves like a small company and they need to take a business course on how to organize yourself and move your product, move your
Mhm.
units successfully. Never talked about. Like money was just like, no, we don't talk about it. I'm like, is everybody independently wealthy? What's going on? Like, this is not normal. The world is, you know,
I
very
think
shadowy in the art world.
a lot of artists are really precious about like about their artist persona, so much so that they refuse to use the word brand to like, and I get that, but at the same time, like, dude, it's almost more gauche to be precious about branding than it is to be like, oh no, like it's sometimes it just, to me, I'm sorry guys, to me it just reads as pretension.
I hear you.
But
I mean, it's the same thing, right? But they just
yeah.
don't want to use that word. And I understand that, part of art is the seduction, is this
Mhm.
dream arena that you're working in. That's part of it. You're selling a dream. But that's marketing, man.
Yeah,
That's the dark arts.
exactly.
That's like classic. That's what it is.
Did you say
So
dark arts?
if
Okay. Okay,
if
I'm
they had
with it.
just given us more skill set, we wouldn't
Yeah.
be so much in debt overall. But it was really fun to study. And the biggest thing that I did that really kind of caught fire at school was, I was in an installation class and we were, looking at different things in installation. And I just got really taken by happenings in the 60s. I was like, oh, that seems
Mhm.
so great. I love the word. It's really interesting, experiential, time-based piece. And so I liked that. And I wanted to work with something that was really um, unusual. And so I've always been a wannabe scientist.
Mhm.
So I wanted to work with pheromones and sort of
Oh,
how people respond to that. And so I had read all this research, and there's this one particular pheromone called the icebreaker. And that's the type of pheromone that when you interact with it at a party, you're like, you and me are going to make the babies now. And it works for gay or queer. It's the same reaction.
does
And
it is what okay, let's rewind a little bit
yeah,
because I have like a very basic understanding of what a pheromone is. And so like, can you bottle that shit or do you just have to have someone create it?
well, here's the fascinating thing about pheromones. So you can't actually consciously smell a pheromone. When someone's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I really love their pheromones," I'm like, "You might, but you love their body odor." But
Yeah.
they're both red. They both are molecules that are registered in the nasal cavity.
Mhm.
But here's the thing about pheromones. Pheromones is about communication. And again, with queer or straight, you're just trying to find your mate. And the reason why you find somebody so attractive is because their immune system is the most dissimilar to yours to
Oh,
ensure that you would have a healthy baby. Because the body doesn't know that you're just having sex recreationally or you actually want to have a baby. They're just like, here's the
yeah.
desire, go for it. And so I thought, that's that's what's happening in art school. People are hooking up all the time. What if we weren't so concerned about whether or not they wear the right clothing or they listen to the right music? What if we could just cut through all that red tape and just get down to the chemistry? Because everyone's like, I just really want chemistry. So I was like,
Mm.
let's just do the chemistry. So I decided to
Is
throw this
that what a
party.
woman is telling me when she says she doesn't feel chemistry? She just like she's not smelling the pheromones.
The pheromones aren't working. It's just like her
Ah,
body's like, nah, that's not it.
okay. All
That's
right.
not it. Um, so I decided to create this happening, and I invited the whole school. I had flyers all over the place. And I was like, oh, art school students, they'll totally get into it. So I was like, listen, come to this party. I will have free beer. There's going to be a DJ. All I want you to do is don't shower, don't wear perfume, don't wear deodorant. Come au naturel, because that's what we want. And so when people got there, I had silk screened the molecular structure of the pheromone on a t-shirt and gave everybody a fresh t-shirt. And so
Mm.
once I got everybody inside, I cranked up the heat to like 85, like a Bikram yoga class. And I was like, I just want you to sweat, just sweat it out. Whatever you want to do, dance in the corner, jumping jacks, whatever. For the next 5 hours, you're just going to sweat and drink beer and listen to the DJ. And so people had a great time. And then at the end of the night, I collected all the t-shirts.
Mhm.
And then for the next 2 weeks afterwards, during lunch hour, I would host these smelling salons. And so what you had to do was sit
Only
down,
art students would go to that.
right? Only art students, right? So you had like 60 t-shirts to smell of like
Uh,
serious body odor.
uh,
And the only way I could get people to do it, well, I was like, listen, the odds are this. You've got 60 t-shirts. I'm not going to tell you if it's a guy or a girl. You just got to smell number 5 and tell me, I want you to rate the fuckability of this t-shirt. Now, when you smell it, I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're in bed and you roll over and the pillow smells like this body. Does
uh-huh.
it turn you on? And everyone's like, oh, where are those t-shirts at? I was like, guaranteed you're going to find at least one person you want in this
Uh-huh.
group. I didn't have the data for that. That was a total lie. That's the dark arts, right? Had to get them like, yes, you will find your person. So I had everybody rate the t-shirts, and the majority of the people who came to the party wanted to then sample the t-shirts. But
Mm,
I was also able to get people who didn't attend the party because they were a little freaked out to
yeah.
smell and rate the t-shirts. And so at the end of the 2 weeks, I revealed the identities of all the numbers of the t-shirts. So then people
Uh-huh.
could find each other if they wanted to hunt that person down. And people came up to me and they were like, I found number 5 and oh my God, like, wow, I would never have slept with them because I was too busy, worrying about their chucks or not. And wow, that was amazing. So that was cool. And my professor was like, I can't believe you pulled it off. That was so weird. I can't believe
Mm.
you got people to sniff other people. Like, you're such a strange kid. And I was like, no, no, this is going to be a thing, trust me. And he's like, you're not going to put it online? I was like, no, no, I'm not going to put it online. Somebody's going to copy it. And I want it to be like its own special thing. Flash forward 2 years later, this woman in Brooklyn starts throwing pheromone parties.
Mm.
It's a corporate company now,
Mm.
and she makes lots of money
Ew, that's
doing
gross.
it. It's so gross. It's such a disappointment. I was like, oh, and so I emailed her and I was like, funny how your company is exactly like the art project that I did. She's like,
Mhm.
really? I had no idea. Meanwhile, I've already Googled her ass. We had friends in common on Facebook. And one of
Uh,
the people who was in my pheromone party was friends with hers in Brooklyn,
uh,
you know. C'est la vie.
artists. Yeah, that seems like a common thing.
It
Or
is.
parallel thinking, quote unquote.
I mean, if it's good enough to steal, it's good
Yeah,
enough, right?
yeah.
And that's what you got to take from it. Because, now that it's all corporatized, it's safe, it's easy. And, when
I don't
I
know.
did
I
it, it
think
was
with a
very
corporate
different.
slant, it's more gross.
Yes, I mean, it's just different. Like, there's no risk involved. Like, there's no like
Art
risk.
school's supposed to be smelly.
It
Corporate is,
is.
yeah.
It is.
So I don't know. Did anyone hook up on the night of the party?
Yes,
Okay.
they did. Totally, they did. I mean, I think I silk screened like almost 100 t-shirts,
Uh-huh.
but 40 people just never returned the t-shirt. Like they
Oh,
wanted the
okay. Yeah,
t-shirt, and
yeah.
I was like, I knew that was gonna happen. I was like, yeah, I probably would have stolen a t-shirt too. That's cool. Like
Yeah.
whatever. That's art school for you. But no,
Yeah.
people definitely hooked up that night.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you
So
feel like some sort of weird madam bringing people together? Dark arts.
I just felt like it felt like I was doing a really good, like it was like my of service deed. I was like,
Getting
children, don't get wrapped up in the outer. Get into the chemistry. That was my idea
did
behind
you
it.
and then like did you start a trend where people just started to smell each other's armpits before like as they met?
I wish I had, but smelling people has always been part of that social dance. I had
Yeah.
read um somewhere that the romantics, in the 1800s, especially a lot of male poets would tuck a handkerchief in their armpit for weeks on end and just have it there. And so when their groupies, because they had groupies back then, because poets were the rock stars, they would bestow this like super stinky handkerchief to this lucky woman or lad.
She
um
just made me imagine the silliest like like, visual image. I won't even describe it, but based on what you were saying, like the rock star poet with groupies. That's
right.
brilliant. That's like a sketch.
Oh yeah, it's a definite SNL sketch, definitely.
Yeah. But like from when it was good. Like the Mike Myers era,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
like the Dana
Like
Carvey.
sprockets.
Yeah, like Sprockets when Chris Farley was there, when what's his name was still alive before his wife shot him and shot herself. I forget his name right now.
Oh yes, Hartman.
Yeah,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
Kevin Hartman.
No, 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 no.
What's his first name? Fuck. Phil Hartman.
Phil Hartman.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
I'm Troy McClure. Anyway, enough for the reference section of this podcast.
Right. Look in the footnotes, young kids, if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So what else? So you had the piece about the pheromones. So how does that like tie into the broader topic?
So I really like having a shared experience as the focal point of an art piece. I really
Mhm.
like that as the experiential being the art.
So you're
And
like the
so,
what I would classify as the cult leader of
yes, I'll take it.
of
Sure.
the art world.
Yes, of course. Because it stems from the idea of installation, where installation art isn't complete until you have a body inside the space. The body activates
Mm,
the space. And so for me, it's the participation. It's when someone says yes to whatever I'm proposing them to partake in, the action
mm,
of join me in doing this group thing. And what you experience from it is the art. You get to participate of it. It will be unique to you. It's going to serve your tastes and purposes differently than everybody else. But we are going
mhm.
to have a common experience as well as your individual takeaway from it. So,
So
um,
so it's not like you're not an artist that works exclusively in smells. You're an artist that works more in the shared experience element of that.
it's the shared
Although
experience of
that
it.
would be a pretty interesting art practice.
It's fun. I mean, there's no money in it, but there's a lot of stuff that
Well,
has
no,
money,
just
of course.
because I said that I'm against like expensive art schools teaching or have like I think there is a value to art that is like, and I do think that there is a rigorous study that can go into it and that helps it. So I just have a problem with the institution,
I
like
agree.
yeah.
I agree.
And I
No, it is
and I think
definitely.
that they can be very dogmatic in certain senses. And a lot of the people that teach there are from like a generation ago, right? So it's like by, I don't know. It's a different, like,
It's an
it's,
ever-changing landscape. It's a moving target. It's really
and the
hard
professors all
to.
fuck the girls. Like, come on, dude.
Oh
It's
my God,
just all shady.
that's a
It's just
whole other
shady.
podcast.
It's just shady. Art
It
schools,
is.
and like as much as I appreciate what I get out of what I've gotten out of art school and out of learning like and of study, and I think that the study of art in an academic space is a useful thing. I think ultimately, institutionally, it's just disgusting. You know, like it's exploitative in so many levels. They're like, to some degree, like most people, maybe it's more less transparent if what they're teaching you is or maybe it's more transparent if what they're teaching you is to make art that isn't going to sell. You know what I mean? Because that, at least they're upfront. Because to a large it's not like getting a fucking law degree. you know
No, it's so not. There's so much, God, what is it? Again, it's like this very nebulous, almost promise, but not quite. Because I think a lot of kids go into arts, roll up into art school and think they're going to be Matthew Barney. They
Yeah,
really think that that's going to happen for them. And I'm like, did you even study who he is? Like how he was
yeah,
already golden before he even got to Yale. So like, sorry, Charlie, it's
yeah,
not going to happen that way for you. Um, but yeah, I do feel like it is. I mean, academia writ large. I mean, when I was going to a traditional liberal arts school, there was so much of the hero worship of girls being totally enthralled by male professors and being taken under their wing, whether or not it was just for an evening or they ended up, getting married after somebody graduated. It's just,
yeah,
the imbalance of power it's still around and it's very disappointing. Um, but art school, yeah, could really use a tune up,
yeah,
to say the least. Really could, because I do feel like we are not in the age of patrons. We no longer have patrons, and galleries are having a hard time. The problem is like there's so many people making art right now, more than there've ever been in the history of man. So how like in the 90s everyone was a graphic designer.
yeah,
Now everyone's a performance artist now. Everybody's like an installation multimedia artist, baker, influencer, and it's like, great, you do
stop
you, do
describing the
all the
guests of
things.
the show.
I I aspire to have multiple careers, you know. I stand on the sidelines and being like, how do you do that? Okay, number
Yeah,
one, be influencer. Influencer of what the fuck ever. Okay,
yeah,
got it. Next. Um, but I do think it's, part of it again is like you are your own best hype machine. If you
yeah,
don't care about your work, if you don't think your work is amazing and you have something to say, no one else is going to care about it. So you have to be comfortable with that. And you also have to be afraid not to make a lot of crap work that's never going to see the light of day. And that's just part
yeah,
of it, you
yeah.
know. Um,
Well,
but I
I
think
think it's
that
just editing. I mean, not everything I make is great. In fact, large majority of what I make is garbage, and no one sees it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, definitely. I mean, I really
Actually,
try.
no, I'm kind of a genius. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm overselling it though. Like, definitely, it's not everything that I make is crap. I don't hate everything. I don't think everything is good enough to show. There are things that I like elements of that, like, I'm like, it's iterative in terms of like what I ends up showing. Not everything is ready. It's like anything. You don't show your first draft of anything.
No, definitely not. But it's all valuable. It's all
Yeah,
leading to something. You
you
have
get
to
to
go
the
through these
fifth
various,
draft if you, yeah,
lots of rough drafts, lots of iterations, lots of spinning it on its head, leaving it alone, trying something else. Um, but yeah, trying to figure out the hustle, trying to figure out what you're doing. So I have like two Instagram accounts. One is like straight up stuff that I can sell. And the other is my latest interactive project, and it's called In Shelter Zoo. And I started it in March of last year when we were all sheltering in place. And the basic premise was, wow, we're all sort of stuck inside, like we're in a zoo, like we're animals trapped in a cage. And I was like, okay, well, and it's actually for our preservation. And that's, a lot of animals are extinct unless they're in a zoo. So this is for our, ability to live beyond this.
Mhm.
So how can I make that interesting? How can I connect with people? So I was like, well, what do people do? They're at home, they're trying to figure out something crafty to do. Everybody's making sourdough starter. So everyone's like kind of feeling crafty. Okay, let's do something crafty. What are people doing already? They're already taking selfies. So something crafty and selfie. Oh, let's make a mask because we're already
Mhm.
making them anyway.
You were
So I
making
basically,
masks, right?
huh?
Before is this a new project or did
So this is a
you
project that I started in March, and it's been
but you
ongoing.
in your own practice you've been making masks before, right? Or is that my imagination?
More costumes than masks,
Okay.
per se. But I was like, let's just make a very basic animal mask out of whatever materials you have, and I made a little informational sort of instructional video. And two of my friends had made this platform to sort of highlight artists' solutions of what to do during lockdown. And that sort of, they invited me to figure out a project. And so I made this project. And then it got put onto Juxtapose Magazine's Instagram TV account, and it got like 84,000 hits. And
Nice.
I was
So
like,
did a lot of people did so what you were inviting people to do make their own stuff, to make their own
mm-hmm,
masks? Did that
yeah.
blow up? Did that mean that there were more people interacting with the project itself?
More people interacted with it, but I think it was one of those things where, and I'm still sort of revamping it, of trying to, I think a lot of people are very self-conscious still about their ability to make something.
Mm,
It needs to be perfect, and I'm like, oh no, man, it can be whatever. Like there's no mask will be refused. Basically,
yeah.
all animals will be accepted in this zoo. So
Yeah.
you make it, you shoot it, you send it to me, I put it in the zoo, and it's there for forever and ever.
Uh-huh.
And it was really just about reaching out through Instagram and being like, hey, does anybody want to play with me? Because
Yeah.
I'm bored in the house, bored. You must be bored. You probably have some office supplies, some scissors, some paper, got a Sharpie. We're in business. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So it was really
I
great.
watched this one unfold, I think, a little bit. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that. I think I'm only following your account, and you showed a little bit of it on your account, so I only caught a little bit. I didn't realize it had gotten so big. That's amazing. Congrats.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's still growing. And I would like to grow it some more. But it's still, yeah, it's however people want to make a mask, they can make it.
Mm.
I've had people make paper mache masks. I've had people do like assemblage masks, like whatever they want. It's really interesting. And so I'm thrilled because, it's great to have a way to be social and creative while we're all stuck at home. We're
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
having this universal experience, for better or for worse. So let's try to take advantage of it and make something interesting, if not connections. And so what was really exciting was the first person who participated was this woman in Russia. She had seen it
Oh,
on Juxtapose, and she was like, this is cool. I want to do this. And it was great. And so then after she did it, we were off to the races. So
that's
that was
cool.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate. Part of the reason I do the show is just because otherwise, like, I was having a hard time keeping up with like going to see my friends regularly, and I just wanted to talk to artists on a regular because they're fucking weird. I recently went to or in on Halloween was the last time that I got out to like an actual opening, and it was in a parking lot with like street installation is like setups, right? People were just putting things out in the space, and and then everybody was in costume, and I like when I got there after work I was like, oh man, I'm just so glad to be around weirdos, like it's that feeling of like, and they're everywhere. There's like, you can find somebody in the middle of fucking nowhere that like sometimes the show gets downloaded in places and I'm like, Oh, okay. Some random country that like I only know conceptually, and now I'm like, because someone listened to it, I know where it is on a map a little bit.
You're like, yeah, Estonia, I see you. Thank
I don't think
you.
that one, but I'm trying to think of like what's an obscure one. I can't remember right now. I think the most recent one that I was like, oh, cool, Moldova. Someone from Moldova's downloading. And then I invited someone from Turkey. So I'm down to like have people from Turkey start downloading when I put that episode out,
Yeah,
because I've always wanted to go to Constantinople, which I know is not called
man,
Constantinople.
it's a rad. Turkey's amazing,
Yeah. So
and
yeah,
it's an
it's a
amazing
it's
city.
it's a
Beautiful.
really nice, like it's really nice to be able to like interact with people even across like language barriers, or maybe in your case they were able to sort of understand English, right? But to sort of just have like, while everybody's being vilified by the media, still be like, oh, people in Iran are listening to this. Oh, they're not that different, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely. Yeah, no,
So I love that.
I think that we need, now more than ever, art is the solve. It's the balm that we all need. So we're all
Yeah.
hopefully reading more books, listening to more music, reading more poetry, taking a drawing class online, listening to more podcasts. It really is serving us because we can't, like you say, just be around other people. So we have to
Yeah.
sublimate with art, and art is a really good stand in. Um, so giving people something to do in order to connect with other people, I think is fantastic. I'm a huge supporter of TikTok. I think TikTok has been
Yeah.
incredible for my sanity because I follow so many different types of people on TikTok. I mean, I follow lawyers and nurses, and then, a whole bunch of weirdos who just
Mhm.
have, a bone to pick with society or life in general or want to give tips. And I'm like, yeah, I love a good tip. What do you got for me?
Mhm.
So, we're all just trying to reach out, and I support that because I
Yeah.
people are fascinating, and I want to know what people are thinking about and what they're struggling with because we're all struggling. It's
Yeah.
hard right now.
Well, can you tell me a little bit more about the happenings? Because that's a little bit of a dark, I mean, or like a blind spot for me. Because I remember a little
Yeah.
bit of like the '60s and all that. I mean, I remember it like I was there. No, I remember what I learned about it, but I think a refresher would do me some good. Like,
I mean, what I took from my art history class and what we were talking about happenings, a lot of it was people coming together and possibly taking the recreational something something, obviously. And it was like very rustic installation where they'd have projections and bands playing. I mean, it was like a basic, what we would call like a basic warehouse party now. But
yeah,
back then it was like, oh my God, you've got like 4 projections at once and online
yeah.
music, and there's a band and there's a pool. What? And
Yeah.
we're like, that's like Tuesday in LA. What are you like? Wow. Wow.
But it
Um,
started there, so it's important.
but it started there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so again, like having that idea of curating an experience is what I'm really interested in. And I think on a smaller scale, if you can throw a really good dinner party,
Mhm.
I think that's amazing because you're trying to create this atmosphere in your home. So, you're picking out music, you're picking out, lighting, you're picking out who's going to come, what you're going to feed them, what you're going to give them to drink. And the conversations are sort of the art piece that come out of a really good dinner party. Because when there's a really good dinner party, the conversation is on fire. Everyone is fascinating and interesting and funny and strange. And you get to peel off into those little corners and have those little mini discourses with 2 to 3 people. And then you rotate and you find other people. And then for the next couple of weeks, you talk about, like, you talked to that guy too? Did he tell you about this octopus? Yeah, me too. Oh my God, what a weirdo. I love those. I love those. And so I've also been a huge fan of throwing dinner parties, and that's been really hard. Obviously,
Mhm.
now we can't do it. Um, But that idea of intentionally trying to think about, what do I want somebody to have coming out of this experience? What do I want to have them bring with them? Is it something that they've learned? Is it a connection? Do they get to be seen and heard because they're doing something interesting? And I like that ability to give that to somebody, to organize that for people, because I mean, I think artists naturally can do that. But I think, everybody can benefit from having something that is sort of more tailored to something unique, because it's always one of those things where it's almost impossible to think now because everyone has a phone with recording. But remember, back in the 80s and 90s, it was like either you were there or you weren't there. You just had to
Yeah.
be there. And I love that idea of like, you just had to be there, man. It's never going to
Mhm.
happen the same way twice. So
Do you banish phones for that reason, or
no, 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 no,
no,
not at all.
it
No,
doesn't get extreme like that?
no, no, absolutely not. No, because I mean, I do think that pictures, they're just taking a second of what's happening.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I photographed the pheromone party, and I actually had a friend shoot Super 8 of it too, which was really fun because I also screened that at the reveal of everyone's identity in the numbers, and we slowed it down. So it looked like some weird 60s experiment of people like milling around, all wearing these t-shirts and like slowly dancing, and there's no sound. And they're like, what is this?
That's hilarious.
um, but I do think that, I've always really loved science. And so having these happenings incorporate science is another way that I get to be a mad scientist. So another piece that I did that was a happening inspirational piece was, I wanted to work with mirror neurons.
Okay.
So basically what a mirror neuron does is that's our ability to watch something being done in front of us to learn how to do it.
Oh, that
Um,
so neurons would be in your brain, I guess?
so neurons are in your brain, and so this is a special type of mirror neuron that helps you have the ability to learn by watching. And it
Mhm.
was, and what's interesting is it's a relatively new discovery in humans. They first discovered it in some sort of ape, maybe a bonobo. Don't quote me because I'm not a scientist. But it was
It's
only in
it's a
19.
it's a good one to throw out there as like it I think it might be the funniest name for it's a monkey or an ape? I think monkeys have tails, apes have no tails.
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
So you didn't commit either way, you just said possibly?
Can I
It's
call
one
a
or the other?
biologist? Let's clear this up.
That's you are good at parties. That's the best answer anyone can get.
Can I get a lifeline with a biologist here? Um, so they only confirmed rather mirror
Mhm.
neurons were in humans in 1996, which is
Okay.
fascinating, by Italian scientists, actually, which is really
Mhm.
cool. So I wanted to again work with this very microscopic element in our body and make that the focal point of my art. So what I did was, um, again, I threw a party because that's kind of my milieu. And what I did was, have you watched any of the David Attenborough's documentaries on animals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of them, yeah.
You're aware of it.
It's
So he,
the same shit as a Morgan Freeman documentary, just with, David
if you've
Attenborough.
watched any Mutual of Omaha, Wild, it's the same old thing. It's awesome. It's like majestic animals doing majestic things, right?
Soothing British voice telling you about nature.
Right. It's so soothing. So he had this one show where it was all these exotic birds doing their mating dances.
That's hot.
And I highly recommend going on YouTube and watching this
I
afterwards
bet you it
because
gets
they're
wild.
magnificent. The moves are magnificent. And so what I did was I did this with a friend of mine, and we made a video of splicing the mating rituals of these birds dancing.
Uh-huh.
And then there was this great public access dance show in Detroit from the 70s, whose name, unfortunately, I cannot recall at this moment. But we found footage online and we spliced it in between those two things. And then we put it on a projector and then we played music. And the whole idea was you're going to have a neuron effect if you are dancing to a music and then you're also watching people dance.
Mm-hmm.
You start emulating their movements, and people also started emulating the movements of the birds dancing their mating ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So people's dance totally changed throughout, the 2 hours that we had this dance party. And that
So
was sort of,
question that just came into my head, and it's fair if you don't have the answer because you're not a biologist, but so those mating rituals are like basically getting the birds horny, right?
oh yeah, no, they're definitely, the ritual is like,
Let's
I'm a
get me
hot bird. Get it. Get it, man. Look at me. Check out my plumage. Check out like me shaking my tail feather,
But
literally.
that's like
And
there's some wop, there's some bird wop there.
oh my God, like the
Yeah.
confidence, delivery of these mating rituals of these birds is humbling. I'm like, God,
Yeah.
I've never seen game like that before. If
I've never
only
tried
I
that
saw.
hard. Maybe I should.
Really? Seriously, we don't try that hard. No, we don't. But it was truly it's magnificent. It's really
Yeah.
amazing, amazing stuff. So that was fun again because there's something really freeing about a dance floor. I
Hmm.
love watching people totally groove, especially at a wedding.
So
Dance
that's
floor at
why
a
you and
wedding,
you and
sacred
Laura
space.
get along.
Yes, definitely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I
Laura
remember
Kim, who was on the show. Yeah.
Laura's work is amazing. But I remember
Oh,
when
she's so funny.
she first moved to Colorado and she's like, God, Michelle, my program's really small. I gotta meet other people. And Colorado's like really sporty.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'm like gonna be a sporty person. I was like, I got you. I got you. What you're gonna do is you're gonna find a Zumba class and those are gonna
uh
be your people. And she was like, really? And I was like, trust me, it's so much fun.
She's thriving. I see her doing Zumba, so
I mean, yeah, she's like a registered, she could teach Zumba now. Like she's like a
Oh.
Zumba master.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yeah, yeah. I think yeah. Well, she's a
She's a,
dance master in general. She makes
I
up the
mean,
best dance moves.
her
If
dance
you thought
moves.
if you thought people were coming up with funny dance moves in the 80s, like the sprinkler and shit like that, she's like on a whole nother level.
She is definitely her own drum, and it's incredible. And
Her
uh,
Instagram, I'll plug it. It's Laura on sale at Laura on sale on Instagram. It's very fun.
it's very fun. And she has it also on TikTok, and her TikTok dance videos are on point for
Yeah.
sure. She's she's fearless in her dance. And I love that. And I love that about dance is the ability, it gives people this ability to have courage for 3 minutes in a way that they might not have in their day-to-day lives. And that's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that. I support that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I am.
That's a courage I don't have necessarily to just dance by myself on camera for 3 minutes and post on the internet, but I respect it. I have kind of seen a little bit like it is funny just to see like how bad some of the people that make popular dance videos are at dancing or how like awkward they look, and it's just because they're attractive. But you're like you're not graceful at all, what is going on, but it's still like, but it's like big breasts and they're jiggling. Tells you about my
Ma-
Instagram consumption.
mating ritual right
Dating
there,
ritual.
shake those assets, show them what you got. But
So
that's
go
mm,
ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's what's so great about dance too, is that I think there's, for me, what I love watching is the not so perfect dancer.
Hmm.
If it's all so perfect, I'm like,
Yeah.
where's the spontaneity? I need a little bit of grit. I need a little bit of
No, no,
awkward.
no. I'm talking about like being sexy when you're trying to be sexy, as opposed to being awkward when you're trying to be
Oh,
sexy.
sure. Oh, sure. Listen, there's a reason J-Lo is J-Lo. You know,
Yes,
like,
yes, yes,
do
yes.
not, you cannot
And it
resist
has
that
little to do
power.
with dancing. It's more about her butt. But
I mean, it's about everything. I mean, it's her skin, it's her movement, it's her voice, it's everything.
wow,
It's a
I feel
whole
like we've
thing.
tapped into a huge fandom here. Are you a huge J-Lo fan?
You know, I respect J-Lo immensely. I mean,
Okay.
I've been a fan since she was a fly girl.
Okay.
Shout out to her original place and time, you know. I mean, In Living Color was seminal in me growing up. I watched it so
I
much,
used to watch it
and
too. It's
I
pretty
wanted to
good.
be a fly girl for sure.
Really?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I'm terrible at hip hop. I'm like incredibly bad at hip hop, and I've been taking hip hop classes for years. And you know what? I don't mind at all. I don't mind that I absolutely suck at hip hop because it doesn't matter. Because the classes that I was taking, the teacher was like, it doesn't matter how precise it is. It matters that you're moving and you're having a good
Yeah.
time. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
I will never be on the MTV Music Awards as a dance up sing like backup dancer, but
That's
I'm
a that's a
definitely.
that's a teacher that knows how to fill his hip hop class.
She sure did. Absolutely, absolutely. Because it was like this, just the joy of movement, you know, was really what she was
Yeah.
selling. And you know, that's fantastic. And to give people permission, again, give people permission to have that joy in the movement,
Yeah,
I think is
definitely.
so important. And yeah, there is something
But now
utterly
that you say that,
incredible.
I'm totally picturing you dancing like the stereotypical white girl to hip hop.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I don't have that rhythm, but what I do have that was really fun. It's like, you know how like I'm sure you've had one class, two classes that you took in college and you're like, when am I ever gonna use this knowledge? Maybe I'll drop it someday at a dinner party or some such,
Mhm.
but maybe not. So when I was at Bard before I left, I took flamenco classes and I
Nice.
loved it. I loved flamenco and I got really into it. Um, and coincidentally, I had exchange students in high school from Spain. And
Mhm.
so, flash forward, you know, they're all getting married, and I would go to their weddings. And the first wedding that I went to, you know, it was a huge sped, and dancing is obviously important. And so, they'd hired a flamenco band. And so, they start playing flamenco music, and I'm like running to the dance floor, and they were like, oh no, Michelle, not for you. No, you got to know. And I was like, oh, but I do. And they're like, that's so sweet, but like you're gonna be so lost and you're gonna piss people off. Like this is like our culture. Like please don't, please don't. And I was like, I know, I got this. Watch, I got this. Trust me, I'm not gonna let you down. I will not embarrass you because I was the only American out of 400 people at this wedding. I was like, I
Yeah.
will not let you down. Put me in, coach. Put me in. So I was in it and I was totally mixing it up, and all the grandmothers were like circling me, being like, who taught you this? Who told you this? Who told you you could do it like this? How is that possible? And I'm like, I just had a really good teacher. And they're like, she's okay. So I was like, yes, I'm in it with the grandmas.
Nice, nice.
They said yes.
Yeah, I don't have any glory stories of dancing, unfortunately. Where
Yes.
like
Yes.
where people were like rejoicing at like, oh, he's not incompetent. That's
White boy
the
can
bar
dance.
was so low and you passed it. That sounds like casual Hispanic towards white people racism.
Oh gosh. I mean, you know, I mean, I love to think about how, you know, when we're all in grade school, I'm sure you had this experience when you were in grade school where you had that like unit in PE where you had to learn folk dance. You
Oh
had to learn
no,
like
I
square
didn't.
dancing, all
Yeah.
that jazz. No?
Wait, no, where did you have to learn how to square dance?
I had to learn how to square dance like in
In
like
Pittsburgh? No.
no. This is like middle school, lower school. But there was
Okay.
like a whole like unit. There was like 3 months of like learning how to square dance.
Has that
And
ever come in handy?
actually, yes, it has.
Okay. All right.
'Cause I
Well,
mean,
at least
clearly I seek out a dance floor whenever possible.
and you're a fucking Swiss Army knife of different styles.
I try to be, man. I try to be prepared. You know, I
Yeah.
I just go in 2 feet first, like
So how
full
come I've
gusto.
never seen you post a dance video on Instagram? Is it all on TikTok?
No, I don't have any dance videos on TikTok.
Okay. All right.
Um, and I guess what I would have to do is I'd have to create the space of a dance floor for me because
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable just like dancing in front of the camera. Like performing in front of a camera is not my milieu. I like it live.
Well, I think that there's like a little bit of an interesting overlap in our practices because from what it sounds like, you also like to just kind of set up a thing, I mean, my installation work is similar in that it's like I set up things and I like to watch people react to them, right? But mine are a lot less about the people interacting with each other more than people were interacting with me through the thing, right?
Mhm.
Like, so but I do sort of like I do relate to that, like sort of like sitting back and being like, "Whoa, I'm a genius, they're responding."
They're all still very happy.
They like it, they like me.
Dance, little puppet, dance, dance.
If they talk to me, they wouldn't find me weird at all. They would
They
still
like
think I'm
me.
a genius.
They really like me.
Yeah. Except I don't do the party thing, but I guess I host on the podcast, so it's a similar overlap. It's my I guess I have a similar idea, but the interaction I'm interested in is the one that I'm having with the person rather than like the one that they're having with each other, because I'm just more of a narcissist probably. But I think that like yeah, I think that I definitely relate to that sense of like, hmm, I got to these people. You know,
Mhm.
there's something they've been affected by what I did, and they may not even like they don't even need to see me to know.
As you lurk behind the curtain.
They see the real me.
I mean, I think that, podcasts are fantastic because they give the opportunity to have that space to explore the ideas that
Yeah,
the host is interested in.
yeah.
And that's what makes it fascinating. And what I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast is that, you're interviewing all these really interesting people and there's such disparate topics, like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
vastly different. But they're equally interesting. I find them equally
Well,
fascinating and
thank God.
interesting.
I
No,
was
I
worried.
mean, no, I do. I really do. I mean, I totally nerded out on your last guest talking about
The
flags. I
flag.
was like, flags?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about flags.
I got into it too, actually. She was laughing because I was like, I was nerding out on it. I was like, hey, I think you're really like, I think this is one that I could go down the rabbit hole on. And I still haven't posted the images of the flags that she sent me, but when I post them, they're amazing. They're beautiful. Like it's actually something that I'm like, oh, and she holds them all up the same way, like with her behind it, hold on, let me see, like this, and all you
Yeah.
see is her legs and her hands. It's just also a really fun way to look at the flag, like because
Totally. That's such a
there's like
personal way. It's
a
like
person
flag number
hiding
4.
behind it.
Yeah. No, that's great.
But
That's
yeah, yeah,
wonderful. No,
yeah,
it was one of those wonderful things where I was like, "Hey, I have a friend in the flag business.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
tag you guys all on his
yeah,
Instagram
yeah, I
because
saw
it's
that.
pretty cool."
So what is Brian is a vexillologist?
He is an urban planner.
An urban planner, yeah, that's what I
He's an
saw on
urban
his
planner.
Instagram.
But he is also just a really big enthusiast of San Francisco history.
Oh, okay.
And so he had looked up the original history and imagery of the San Francisco flag, which was a phoenix rising out of the rubble.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, what happened to that flag? Let's like bring it back. It's great. It's nice to." I didn't even know that cities had city flags.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's so charming." And so he
That
really
goes
worked.
back to like when cities were countries. They've been
Yeah,
doing that shit
basically
for a while. Like the
little
nation flag is,
republics.
yeah, the
Yeah,
nation flag is the new one that but it's the ubiquitous, it's the one that we always think of. But yeah, man, that shit, it's like, that's the thing that was so fun about that topic. It was like, I didn't even realize how much flags matter until like, I was like, oh yeah. Then I started thinking, like when we started talking about the Capitol thing, which was happening right as we were recording. I did, when she said that people were storming the Capitol, it just washed over me, and I was just like, oh really? And I didn't really even try to visualize it until afterwards, and I was like, oh okay. And we won't get into what I think of that, but
no, of course, yeah. I mean, I think we
we know
shared
that's
similar
like a whole other
sentiments.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm too exhausted. I don't want to get into that shit,
no, we
but
can't. But flags,
yeah,
essential, important symbols of civilization, of
yeah,
identity, and pride and communication. Yeah, flags are cool. Yeah, I'm pro
yeah.
flag. It's very interesting to
I
see.
might have to design one for the show then.
You should.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I feel like I'm always trying to think about not flags, but this idea of like what is emblematic and what would I want? Like I love the fact that bands have swag. Like they have
Mm,
concert t-shirts and they have these symbols. Like who doesn't love the
yeah,
Rolling Stones mouth sticking out the tongue video? Like that's just a great image on a t-shirt, or lots of different band t-shirts are just incredible. And I'm like, God, I really got to start designing t-shirts, but like for art, like an art band t-shirt. Like if I
mm,
was a band, what would my t-shirt look like what is
yeah,
that? Again, it's the dark arts happening again. It's the brand
yeah. Yeah.
happening all
Well,
over
you've
again, but
also
I love
worked
swag.
you've
I
also
love
worked
swag.
with t-shirts before, and you've had them become mementos, right, for of an event too. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like for like the pheromone party, I silk screened all these t-shirts with the icebreaker molecular structure on it, but then I also wanted to have the date, but I didn't want to have it be like, February 27th, 2007. I
mm,
didn't want to have some of that. So what I did was, again, nerded out hardcore. I took my name, my last name, and made it into an element off the periodic table. And so I had the little periodic table square, and my element was morbium.
mm,
And then the top, it's like the atomic weight, and then the other number, the atomic weight, and then there's two numbers on top
yeah, yeah,
of
I forget.
the
Yeah, yeah.
element. And so that was the date of it, February 27, and then the bottom was the number of how old I was when I threw the party, 34. So
Okay.
that was my way of like documenting when the time and space and place was. So yeah, I like I
I'm
like
gonna
visiting.
resist the urge to figure out what year that was, and then do the math about how old you
It's
are.
2007.
See, I didn't fight the urge. All right.
I
Well,
look
it's
I look good for 47. I'm not ashamed.
you know, you look great. That's why I couldn't tell how old you were, but
Thank
yeah.
you. The
Um,
power of the ring.
yeah. Oh, the ring light. That's right. Thank
The
you.
ring light.
You're gonna kill everyone. You look great, by the way. And did your background makes me think of, did you know that like they just recently reported that a bunch of like there's a company that for some reason outfits libraries for people, right? But then they just developed a package for people's Zoom calls, and for like so that like you don't have to actually buy your own books to look smart in the background, like the talking heads that do TV shows for like those people and shit. It's hilarious. Like the level, like, you know, you can buy a set of books that makes you look intellectual and just throw them in the back. I know, I can tell that, like, by just by the way that like some of the books are leaning and stuff like that, that's an actual
It's
real
real. It's
library,
real.
because books are missing and like, you know, but the
Because they're
idea.
all real books. Yeah, they're not like glued together.
But what kills me is that these are people that have like fancy educations, right? And like they could just collect books. So it's like it's an affectation of their class. It's just crazy. Anyway, that shit is just funny.
No, I did. Yeah, well, I was struggling because I love having this massive bookshelf. So I'm proud of all the
Yeah.
books that I've read, and
Mm.
it's very basic source material for me now
Mm.
more than ever. Um, but they always say, like, on a Zoom call, like, you really want to have like a neutral background so it's not distracting. And I was like, I'm an artist. I'm all about distraction. I'm all about entertaining. I want people to be like, wait, zoom in. What is that? Is that Yoko Ono's Grapefruit? Awesome. I love that book. What else she got there? Let's look. Let's look. So yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna have a bookshelf. That's
No, I
cool.
like it. I like it. No, it works great for this. I'm actually kind of disappointed in mine because I'm actually recording this in between a trip to Home Depot, and I'm building like a little like setup for out of 2x4s. And so I I started like cutting with the circular saw and all of that, and then I realized, oh my god, I'm covered in fucking sawdust, and I have to like take a shower before I tape this thing. So then I took the shower, and then I was like, when we started, I was like, oh my god, you know that the wait after like you take a hot shower and you're just like, oh my god, I got to stay up at like
Yeah.
for like for just right before we started recording. So I was a little bit relieved that you were that it took you a second to get set up, because I was like, oh man.
I could take a nap,
I
but I
could,
gotta do this.
yeah, no, this is, but it worked out perfect. I'm like, I guess what it means is that I'm just getting used to like doing this as part of my life now, where I don't need like preparation. Besides, I cheat and I have other people come up with the topics, so all I have to do is be the engineer and the host. So it's
So what was your thesis originally? What was your personal thesis?
oh my I guess my thesis is that I don't know shit and I can always learn more, essentially.
Mm.
You know, like all right, so here's one of the things that, going back to the, like, one of the things that, since I do this thing where I'm speaking publicly, I try to only talk about things that I know about. So for example, with the whole Capitol Hill thing, I don't really know the fucking details, so I don't talk about it, right? To some degree, you know, like with a caveat of people understanding that I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing for people to protest in the Capitol. I don't know why that's so sacred. I do think that like they were let in and shit like that, but like, but I don't really know, you know, like I don't really know enough about what's going on with QAnon and all of that to really know like how much planning went into it. So I stay away from it ultimately. Like conceptually, like I would not have a problem with Black Lives Matter going into the Capitol and protesting, right? So on that level, without having any of the specific details of how many people died, because I know people died and who died for what reasons and shit, but I did hear, for example, that the woman that died believing in QAnon had also voted for Obama, which is fucking crazy, you know, because that addresses like assumptions that I'm hearing people throw around. So
There's a great, there's a wonderful podcast about how people, like someone who could have voted for Obama, found themselves following QAnon and made it to the Capitol
yeah.
and breached the Capitol. So it's called The Rabbit Hole by New York Times.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's incredible because basically the premise of this podcast is talking about how algorithms push
Yeah.
people into topics that they normally would not have considered.
Yeah,
And so they,
so then that only goes to like the point of like, so the algorithm is radicalizing people, but we're blaming other people for it, right? Like,
no, the algorithm is not, it's more nuanced than that. Basically what they were saying is when YouTube first started, it had very little content. So it was like the same 20 videos. And it was like, oh
Mhm.
God, we got to get like things, we got to get more content, we got to get more people to see other things. So they started writing the algorithm where it was like, oh, you saw this documentary on bonobo behavior. Maybe you would like this one on flamingos, but then maybe you watch the one on flamingos and now it seems like you're really interested in Africa. Well, maybe you want to, look about the politics. Do you know about the diamond mines? Do you know about this? So
Mhm.
it's like a very subtle daisy chain event of following sort of how your curiosity gets piqued on different subjects. And so the podcast follows this guy's 2-year viewing history on YouTube and how
Mhm.
he went from being a pretty mild guy who wasn't that interested in politics to like really thinking that QAnon had something to say
Yeah.
and really sort of do this autopsy of sort of how things get
But that
nudged.
doesn't that can't like what I'm saying is what my concern is with people just being banished. Like for example, I definitely think that okay, I definitely think it's a problem for somebody to be inciting violence. But at the same time, like I do not think it's as simple as just being like, oh yeah, we just banned this person for like there are courts, right? We have an infrastructure to handle these things, and for just Mark Zuckerberg and random people at what's it called at Facebook to be unilateral, like for example, I don't exactly know why they banned Ron Paul all of a sudden, but my problem with that is that there is no oversight and there's no accountability. And I promise you, without question, they're going to be doing that to people on the left too, right? It's
Uh,
good. All the
Agreed.
things, all of the things that people are concerned. Like there's this overreaction, right? I think that like people on the left look at fascism and they think of that as the only example of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. But censorship is not a left or right thing. Censorship is always authoritarian, right? So I think that it always comes with good intentions of like, let's censor that because that is evil or that is bad, right? But then eventually you're getting censored when you're actually speaking up against George Floyd being killed and things like that. So for me, I try to be very careful with actually what happened in the details of that. But my serious, like the thing that I feel comfortable is just like outright censorship is always a problem. Like if this dude is inciting violence, prosecute him. That's it. It's as simple as that, right? Like or maybe there should be a court system that decides like due process to deciding whether to censorship somebody. Like I'm not saying don't censor the motherfucker. I'm just saying don't let Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and all these motherfuckers be the ones doing it, because to me that's terrifying. That's like rich motherfuckers that don't necessarily have the benefit of people in mind, right? Doing something that is going to be applauded heroic now, but like down the line is going to be fucking Orwellian as shit, right? Or do you think that I'm like out of place here, or
I mean, it is an absolutely fascinating question to keep asking and to keep
yeah,
examining, because yes, you always risk if you shut down one thing, then other people are going to get shut down, whatever topic it is. Um, I think with what you see with what was being shut down on Twitter and with Facebook, it was about trying to stop disinformation because of what it leads people to do. That if you keep telling people that meteorites are coming and you got to get ready for the meteorite, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, um, people will react to that. And, you know,
But then you
it's,
could ban, the entire establishment media because that's all they do, right?
well,
So
I think it speaks more to what we've really stumbled into in the last 15, 20 years, which is media news, which is different than media. News used to be fact-based, researched.
not
Oh,
really.
there's
There's always this.
obviously there's always an angle.
There's
There's not without
but
angle. There's not
the
without
CIA
angle.
has definitely been infiltrating media for like ever.
Oh,
That's well documented. Yeah,
it's always someone's angle. I'm not saying it is free of that. I'm not saying
yeah.
it's free of that, but I think in the last 5 years specifically,
Hmm.
we have really seen the advent and the power of misinformation, or
But
you can
here's
say,
here
or wait,
here's
let me finish,
sorry.
or what I would say more specifically, the resurgence and the more sophisticated development of propaganda. You know,
But
there's a
you don't
great,
but you don't but here's my issue, because it seems like what we're both agreeing on is that social media is the issue, right? The social media is the problem. And that's fine. I agree that this is new unprecedented way of spreading misinformation, right? But first of all, like, I just kind of feel like, um why does Facebook have all these protections? They are obviously deciding whether, like, at this point, they are acting as a publisher. So here's my solution to the problem. Instead of censoring the president and focusing all that power into these people that run these institutions, why don't we allow people to sue Facebook?
because we know that suing doesn't work.
What do you mean that suing doesn't work?
I mean, if you're trying to get, so you're going to sue Facebook for what exactly? Like for what?
For for being responsible for the spread of misinformation.
And and so what, they're going to pay a fine? They're going to, I'm just being devil's advocate. Like, what is
No,
the best
I
outcome of
understand.
that?
I understand, but I'm saying, like, okay, that at least goes through the court system. There is at least oversight on that. And Facebook is an organization. I think that if people were able to sue Facebook, Facebook just wouldn't exist as huge as a corporation. It would be broken up. So I think that the 2030 protection, I actually think Trump is kind of right on that. Like, I know that he comes from a bad place because he wants the ability to be able to sue people, but I do think that it's problematic when you let oligarchs be the ones who decide, and like, yo, I know that there's like, and dude, I'm a leftist. I am not coming at this from a rightist point of view. I am concerned that that people to the right of me are pro authoritarianism, right? Are pro censorship, and like, it comes from that cancel culture mentality. I just don't think that that is. I just think that that's a problem. I think that it's never, like, once you allow that shit to happen. I think that once they did it to Alex Jones, which I get, but like, I've never actually seen a clip of Alex Jones telling people to go harass people. Like, I've just said him, like, say paranoid conspiratorial shit, and like,
Well, here's an example. I'm going to bring it back to analog. Okay.
okay,
So we're a puritanical historical culture based in
yeah,
puritanical values. So we all know that sex makes babies. It's a
mhm,
biological fact. There's no other way to make a baby. You have sex, sperm, egg, baby. And yet we really have put the kibosh on sex ed in education. It is
mhm,
the one thing that everyone is going to participate in, more or less. And it is the thing that is almost guarded the most in public and private schools.
mhm,
And to me, that is like the most egregious censorship.
mhm,
And they think that having just abstinence or not telling teenagers that they're somehow not going to figure out to have sex is ridiculous. And we've seen it time and again, more education, less babies. So by having this whole abstinence campaign, that's misinformation. That is not solving the problem. And so, yes, that is another way of, so I'm saying that censorship
But
is really
that,
dangerous. It is
but then
dangerous.
that's censorship, and then how would you censor that censorship, and would that be just?
Well, no,
Like
well,
here,
what I'm
okay,
saying is, it's very difficult. We are we are in a place where with the example of sex education, it is the utter denial of the basic facts that they're trying to censor. And that is really, that's dangerous because of all the ramifications that happen. But when you start having people, have this
but
very
I think,
off-ed aspect of what they're reporting on or what they're talking about, of like, well, I really believe that spaghetti monsters exist, and that's my religion, and that's my church, and I want tax exemption because that's what I believe. It's like, great, you can believe that, great, okay, like you do the paperwork, awesome. But I think, it is a constant and important conversation to keep having this rigorous interrogation of what is censorship, who has the right to censor people, or who has the right to free people's ideas.
so let's talk about Julian Assange real quick.
Mm.
Okay. We have a media that is, and a government that is full of former CIA, full of people that used to work in the CIA. This is a new turn. This is something that is didn't happen in the 70s. In the 70s, what they would do is they would have the CIA would have an informant in some random country report something, and then they would have local media, American media, use that source as a source for their story, right? And that's how they would plant stories in the media. Now they just go straight to the actual people that do the media, okay? So we have a society where espionage is part of the propagandistic process. And then we have a dude who exposes that. And I agree with you. Misinformation is always a problem. There's a lot of misinformation about Julian Assange. First things first, Julian Assange has never had, like, WikiLeaks has never had to retract the story, ever. They've been 100% correct, right?
Yep.
So they're trying to censor him by making him a spy. I am saying that in both cases, censorship is wrong. In both
Agreed.
in both
Agreed.
cases, in the case of Julian Assange and in the case of Donald Trump, because even if,
I don't know about that. I think
yes, because look, because if you don't censor that, if you actually prepare the way that you prepare for this, for if they put Capitol Police, they didn't. This is a thing where people were allowed to go into the fucking Capitol to get everybody worked up in a fervor. If you saw during Black Lives Matter how many people they had at the Capitol protecting it, and people knew this shit was coming. There have been, conspiracy theories about this thing forever, and the Capitol Police was just letting people in. So for me, I think that there are many ways of disseminating disinformation, and there is a concerted effort. There is always, like these companies, like Facebook, they don't give a fuck about human rights. They work with China. That, they share data with China, with a bunch of Chinese companies. Like, I think that the if you want to prosecute him for his crimes, you can, and that's perfectly reasonable. If you, I get a little worried though, because people are throwing the term terrorism around, like it's like, oh yeah, these people are terrorists because of the left, right? Our left, or Barack Obama. Anybody that's classified a terrorist has no due process, has no rights. So for me, there's freedom, right? There's, like, this is freedom. And even when you take away Donald Trump's freedoms, you're taking away freedoms from the world constantly, constantly, because you set a precedent. And now you could be accused of inciting violence, right? For saying maybe something that is adjacent. Maybe you say something and someone ends up, it starts a protest, right? Are you responsible for the protest just because you said, hey, fuck this, the government, they're full of shit? Like, I hate Nancy Pelosi, people protest Nancy Pelosi. Now, am I inciting violence?
I think what's unique about, for example, to look at a concrete example of having Donald Trump's Twitter account suspended.
Mhm.
To me, what that says is, because he's the president of the United States, he is not the same as an average citizen.
That's even more
No,
terrifying to me, though.
no, let me finish. Let me finish.
Yeah.
So we, as a culture, look to the chief, and we have anointed him, or soon her, whenever that may be, um, a certain set of values that are above the average citizen. We give their words more gravitas than the average Joe. Whether
Mhm.
that's right or wrong is irrelevant. That's just what happens because the hierarchy is built that way. This is the person at the very top. So obviously, they are imbued with a lot of street cred, whether it's good or not. What makes it dangerous to have someone in that position talk about whatever he wants, whenever he wants, about whatever is happening, makes it far more dangerous because we can prove that he has been saying things that are categorically incorrect, saying that he is correct, acting like he has been ordained by God, acting like a king, when our whole government and democracy was about getting away from having someone who is anointed by God. That's why we left England. We were like, we don't want that. We want to have it organized. We want to have it by the people, for the people. So we don't treat this person like a king. And for me, he was acting and being treated like a king, like he was God given. And I'm like, that's not safe. That's
I
not
don't know.
safe.
I disagree with that. I mean, respectfully, obviously. I
Of course.
no, no, and I think that I like I get very worried because, like I said, we have there are already limits on free speech. You can prosecute someone in a court of law for violating that limitation. If he yelled fire in a crowded theater, we could actually take his words and take the actions and present them in a court. As fucked up as our court system is, at least there would be some due process. And to me, the concern is that we have now somebody whose power usurps the power of our three branches, because now they can censor simply, they can just outright censor a president, Ron Paul, a bunch of people, right? That and look, even AOC said some problematic shit. She was like, we should get rid of all these people that were part of this. Like, yo, motherfuckers didn't know what was coming. There were probably people that were just trying to hedge their bets the way that politicians do, right? For me, like, that if you spend a whole 4 years of a dude's presidency saying that he's not valid, saying that he's not voted, saying that Russians interfered, saying all this shit, and in the end you can't prove it, like, you're kind of fucking asking for people to question. You started this idea that the election results were not valid. This is not a new idea. This has been going on since 2016. People have been questioning the integrity of our election system. So to
Oh,
introduce
before 2016,
no, but I'm
before
saying,
2000.
so this is an inevitable. This was an inevitability that someone would do this shit. And so, like, what I am upset about is, first of all, like, okay, yeah, the most basic bitch thing that anybody pointed out was the fact that that what's it called, that the cops were much nicer to the people in there, and the cops, like, that is the fucking point. The point is that the only shit that really matters is when the powerful are under threat. That's why this is so sacred, right? It was the politicians who had the power to legislate a response that were under threat here. And that's the only reason that it matters. It's the same shit why Watergate mattered. The only reason that Watergate mattered was because it was Republicans against Democrats, powerful people against each other. When it's other people anywhere else, they don't give a fuck. If they had stormed a hospital and tried to protest the hospital for COVID reasons, these motherfuckers wouldn't be facing these penalties. The only reason is because they stormed the power source and they have the power to legislate against this shit. So those are two separate things, right? Like the censorship conversation, right? So why don't they use their legislative power to impeach him instead of fucking censorship? I don't understand why censorship has to be a part of the equation.
I think that with the example of Twitter, it's a private company.
That's worse for me.
But that's the point. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. Because it is their platform. They own the platform. But the thing is, we've all agreed, like if you're on Twitter, you've agreed to the terms and conditions.
But they're not applying the terms and consistency, because if you look at the actual tweets,
doesn't matter.
They're not applying them. No, but they're not. But I get what you're saying. But then that is a problem, right? Because what was the one thing that Mussolini was known for? What was the one thing that the Germans were known for? They were a secularist society, right? Everybody on the left is always like, "Oh, we need secularism. We need secularism." And it's all these religious people that all they do is they're the ones that are responsible for all the wars. Like they were corporatists. They were pro-corporation. They were pro getting the power into private companies, because for the same reason that it's happening now. So there's like something intrinsically fascistic about that argument about saying they're a private company. Like that's a fucking problem. And they don't have to be. They can be held accountable. They can be broken up. They're getting sued right now by the DOJ. So hopefully something's going to come of that. But anyway, I really enjoy this conversation, and I think that we probably won't agree on it fully, so that's perfectly fine.
But that's wonderful. But that's what's fascinating. That's what's really fascinating.
That's totally allowed on this podcast, you know. And I'm definitely not right. I definitely want to make it clear. I have a point of view. I don't think I'm right. My point of view may change somewhere down the line. I may read something that changes my mind. However, I do feel strongly about this, and I understand the notion of like I understand the impulse and I have sympathy for it, but I think it's a dangerous impulse, and I think it's an impulse that is going to, it's already doing it. It's already causing problems because the Young Turks is already getting censored, which is like not a progressive channel that I'm a huge fan of. But if the Young fucking Turks, which are like
I know what it is. I've seen it.
No, but I'm saying they're fucking mayonnaise and they're getting censored on Facebook. Like that is a fucking problem. So this is just a continuation of something. So like this is the big fish. This is the big opportunity, because now they get cheered on for doing it. And then otherwise, you know, so like, sorry if I sound angry. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry.
I appreciate. No, I really appreciate it, because
and I appreciate you talking to me about this.
It's such an important conversation, and I want to circle it back to art and give you a great example, which was we had an exhibition in our gallery, not our student gallery, but our gallery, McBean Gallery at SFAI back in, I don't know, the mid-aughts, when Oakley and Wazar was the dean. And we were able to have access to amazing artists, really rock star artists, to have shows. I'm terrible with names. I'm just going to have to describe it, and people can Google this guy. This guy created a video where he really wanted to, the point of the video was to show how in other countries, this is how they humanely slaughter animals. So it was a video of a slaughterhouse in Mexico where they would first hit the animal on the head with a sledgehammer and then kill it. That was their way. And that was the video. And so people went in, they saw it, they freaked out, they called PETA, they shut it down. There were death threats on the school, death threats on our president. It was absolute pandemonium. It was in the Chronicle. You can read all about it. People were losing their shit. So Oakley and the curator at the time decided to have an all-school meeting about it. And they were like, we want to talk about it because people are having big feelings about it. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. So the student body was really polarized because there was a lot of people who were like, this is animal cruelty. How can you celebrate this? This is terrible. Like, who do you think you are, like bringing this terrible violence into our school? And Oakley basically said, listen, we are here as stewards of the creative practice, and we are here to protect it. You don't have to agree with everything that you see, but we're here to defend it with our lives right now. And you should be so lucky that someone should get so upset about your work, whatever it is that you're saying. And we are here to protect it. And it can get this hard. It can get this tense. It can get this scary. But we as a school are taking a stand, and it's closed to the general public, but any student who wants to go in and see this show, we will open it up to you, because we're here about ideas, and we're here to talk about it, and we're here to disagree, and we're here to have discourse, and we're here to ask better questions, not just seek answers, but ask better questions. And I think that's what's been so exciting talking with you today, is that, you know, especially when you have, there's nothing worse than being in an echo chamber with your friends. We're like, oh yeah, political this, we're all agreed. Yeah. Well, that's boring as shit, because you're not going to learn anything. If you don't learn without a little friction. And so it's really exciting to get into a topic where we're not completely congruent, because you're bringing ideas to me and I'm bringing them back, and we're able to tease it more and more and more. And I think that is a really valuable art form that is lost in America, because we don't like to disagree.
No, definitely.
We don't have, like, Americans have lost the idea of what is discourse versus an argument. We're having a discourse. We're not having an argument. It's not personal that we feel personal. Here's my dog. I know.
I've been gone for 2 hours. Yeah.
But I think it's important to have that.
My final thought on it is just like, to some degree, you have a right to be wrong too. You know,
Absolutely.
you have a right to believe in things that are wrong, right? Because if we start telling people what's right, then we start banishing religions and shit like that, right? So to some degree, it's like, what level of wrong is okay, right? Is it okay to like continue to print propaganda in the New York Times for a war that we've been in for 19 years? Is that inciting violence? Because I'm okay with censoring that. You know, those arguments for war, but that's not what's going to happen. The reality is that there's no benevolent censorship. On an ideal plane, I would be totally for it. But who's to say that I didn't say something today that some motherfucker is going to misinterpret and then go out? And I think about these things, right?
Oh,
because
best believe people are going to misunderstand you. Like,
misunderstand
that's
me.
guaranteed.
Okay.
That's guaranteed.
So then someone's going to misunderstand me and argue with me, right? What if somebody misunderstood me and did something violent? Am I responsible for that? My intention was never to do that. I know the situation with Donald Trump is a little bit different, right? But we had the resources to stop that invasion. Why was it all his? Nobody had any fucking, there was like nobody in the FBI, nobody in the Secret Service, nobody in the CIA that was like, maybe, you know, the Capitol is not run by the president as far as I understand it, right? It has its own fucking like security force. I don't think that he's necessarily like, is the problem that they were underestimating a white mob? Is the problem that
it's so much more. It's so much more. But I mean, that's a whole other.
Was it intentionally not well guarded? So okay, so then all right, like all these little things I think are also relevant in terms of this discussion, right? Like, because everybody was so outraged that these motherfuckers were taking selfies. That's a problem. Let's talk about the police there. Why is the police more likely to let them in that situation and be along with them? What isn't that an argument for defund the fucking police? Right?
Well, isn't it just another example of systemic racism? Like, in the end.
But it
because
shows
if Black Lives Matter had try to
Yeah,
do something like that, you know it would have been like Fort Knox. You know it would have.
exactly. Well, no, it was when they were protesting. It what 100%. There's
Yes, when
pictures
Black
of it.
Lives Matter was protesting, absolutely. People thought
There are
like we were gonna
pictures.
have
I've
war.
seen it. I've seen it. And you have so at what point does it is it like he incited it or it was allowed to happen for the fucking theater of it? How, like, no, I mean, is it conspiratorial to ask that question? I don't think so. I don't think that that's
I
like
think
a
it's
fucking
important to
crazy.
ask all questions. It is important to ask all questions and to remain vigilant and keep asking questions and keep exploring ideas and information when it comes to light. And we're still, I mean, New York Times in real time, it keeps refreshing their page about latest things that, are coming about what was happening in the Capitol,
New York Times
what
is
was told,
problematic as
what's not.
fuck.
It's probably, of course.
It's
Well,
New
so is
York.
Fox News. So,
No, but New York Times is like is pro every war. So that's something that I want people to think about when they read that shit. You know,
absolutely.
and so
It's not what it's called.
their outrage. So here's the thing: their outrage over this right wing coup is nothing like their support for every other right wing coup, right? So when we're supporting coups, and then all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, they're good in Latin America, but then we come over here, and this is a fight against democracy. You're acknowledging that you're overturning democracy when you fight a coup, right? So we're not spreading democracy.
Well,
We're importing coups.
I mean, there's, a coup in South America is different than a coup in the United States, for sure.
Well,
For
no,
sure.
but I'm saying New York, the New York Times is always for the coups. And now they're against this one. Why? All the coups are right wing. Juan Guaido is right wing. Everything is to destabilize a left wing government, right? And not an
Not every
authoritarian
coup. Not every coup. You got to look at
in Latin
Argentina.
America.
In Argentina,
Which one?
which coup? It's hard to
Which
say. How many coups happened in the 70s? It was hard to say because it was like dictator, coup, dictator. Everybody's getting disappeared. You don't know if it's the guerrillas or the government. Both were taking people off the street. You didn't
contemporary
know.
coups right now in the last what happened what happened in Honduras where they're turning it into an open air prison. That's a right wing coup. What happened to Evo Morales? That's a right wing coup. What happened to Lula in Brazil? That's a right wing coup. All of these things are right wing coups, and they're done under the guy. So like and the New York Times is always for them. The New York Times is for the coup. In fact, the New York Times had to publish Max Blumenthal and didn't even give him credit when they acknowledged that it was Guaido's forces that set the fucking shit on fire. So all I'm saying is that like that's the other problem that I have with it. Who controls what the truth is? Because the truth tellers are not always telling the truth, right?
Oh, I mean, the truth is relative. The truth is written by the winners. Truth is written by the people with power, and that's what,
And we
made
say, but we
and
say
that's
that
what
with
made and
ourselves.
that's what made Twitter so interesting because it
Yeah.
became this unilateral stage where anyone of any power with an opinion could take it in 140 characters and say whatever the fuck they wanted to say in real time, and it was disseminated. And that's an incredible power.
But that started with Fox News. That and then MSNBC went into that and CNN.
I'm sorry, wait.
So are you familiar with? Do you know who Matt Taibbi is? He's a writer for the Rolling Stones. He has a podcast with
Yes.
Katie Halper. So he wrote a book called Hate Inc., which is an updating. He considers it of what's it called? What's his name? Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. And instead of it being manufacturing consent, now what it is that echo chamber that you were talking about, right? The echo chamber where people go to Fox News and they watch the same thing, and their beliefs are reinforced. It's not facts, it's editing of facts to fit a narrative, right? And then you have places, so like Fox News and the Wall Street Journal would probably be a little bit more to the right, because that's who Bill Clinton was trying to appease. But then you have MSNBC and the New York Times, which are kind of like liberal mags, but they're also pro-war. they're like war hawkish as fuck. They're pro coup. They're pro because what they serve is the international financial system, right? The global financial system that like every valuable resource needs to be a part of. And so if a government in Brazil or in Bolivia is not trying to give away the fucking lithium so that what's his name, Elon Musk can build his batteries, then we're gonna fucking coup them, like he said on Twitter. He's like, we'll coup whoever the fuck we want. So I think that like we do say shit like history is written by the winners, but we never fucking acknowledge that we believe a lot of our own bullshit because of that, right? Like,
Oh yeah, we don't.
yeah,
I mean, we absolutely do, and that's the other thing is that we don't have. We get into our grooves. It's like either you're really so it's difficult to find individuals who really try to comparison shop knowledge,
yeah,
who are reading many things. So when someone's like, "Oh, where do you get your news?" I'm like, "Okay, well, I start with the New York Times because it's basic, because it's a familiar place to start. But then I read The Economist, then I read the Wall Street Journal, then I read The Guardian UK. Then, I'm trying to get lots of different things because I'm trying to aggregate
yeah.
lots of different
I tend
sources
to
because, you're lazy if you're only reading one magazine or one, watching one TV show. It's like you
I tend
got to
to
diversify.
I tend to read more journalists, specific people than what's it called? Than actual news. Like I think of like, okay, I'll read some Glenn Greenwald, I'll read some Matt Taibbi, and like because I feel like they have a little bit less of an imperialist view of the world and are actually going to discuss things outside. Like for example, Max Blumenthal is constantly in Venezuela, and I think Matt Taibbi is maybe a little bit more of an establishment figure, but like what's his name? Glenn Greenwald started The Intercept and just left because they were trying to censor his article on Joe Biden on his criticisms, right? So it's all these institutions like it's like the same thing as colleges. They're not noble by nature, right? And we live in an era where they don't make money off classifieds, so they can't just print whatever the fuck they want. They are actually beholden to corporate powers in a way that because Craigslist came along and became the internet classifieds, and now people stopped posting shit in the newspapers. So
Mhm.
so for me, I mean, I'm happy to acknowledge that just based on that disclosure, like there is a possibility that I'm also kind of creating a bubble if I'm not reading Barry Weiss, although Barry Weiss would be a fucking waste of time to read, right? You get what I'm saying? Like there are people
Of
that
course.
I can just be like, I don't need to read this motherfucker because I always know his take. Whereas like someone like Glenn Greenwald, I won't always agree, but at least I know he's being thoughtful and intellectually honest. If that's the thing, if I find somebody that's intellectually honest, I can rely on them because I know where I agree with them and I don't, and I can see where their take is. Sort of like
Mhm.
reading a movie reviewer, like where you like
Sure.
what
It's
kind of
like,
movies they like.
of course. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I think it's important just to remain open and to continue to ask questions and to continue to push your comfort zone of what sources you think are credible and go a little bit beyond what your
Yeah,
normal fodder is,
yeah.
because we have to, as liberals, we can exist in an echo chamber so easily. We can all just get so
Well, the
self-satisfied,
the media is
sit on
designed
our
for that. The
college
algorithm's
degrees and
designed
read our
for
New
that.
York Times and be like, I know everything. I listen to NPR. I'm super smart and everyone else is an idiot. And it's like, well, that's really disturbing. You
Yeah.
gotta like you gotta sample from all the places, because even if you disagree, because I do think it's important to watch Fox News at times because I need to understand how people are coming to their conclusions.
Tucker
It's like,
Carlson
oh,
is right twice a day sometimes, like a broken clock. That is the joke I'm making. I don't actually
yeah,
think he's right twice. No, but
of course.
look, Tucker Carlson is definitely a fucking bigot and all of that. But he's actually a populist too, right? Like he talks about people from an economic standpoint that I think I would like to see more of the right talk from, because he's not necessarily always pro corporate, even though he is a corporate shill. Like, it's not like, I think he came down for stimulus checks, and then here's the thing, here's the little secret that like people don't realize about MSNBC and CNN. Fox News, which is why I agree with you about Fox News. Fox News will have people from the left, from like leftists, not neoliberals, like actual leftists that support Venezuela and are anti-coup people. Like, they'll have those people on the network. Fox News, MSNBC never does. MSNBC only has, like, because if they did, their viewership would get angry because it would be like they would be criticizing their heroes from the left, and there's nothing something a neoliberal hates more than a Republican, like, than somebody who is on the left, farther to the left of them, because they think that they're like purists or pipe dreams, and it makes them feel like they're shady and corrupt. But anyway.
I mean, it's, that's the thing, is that, as artists, I think one of our best assets is to call into question ideas
Yeah.
through what we do. And, not that I'm saying everyone needs to make didactic work. I'm not saying that at all. But I
No,
am saying that
because I definitely don't.
because I definitely, please don't, please don't. But I do think that, art is a really great place to safely explore different ideas and to consider different ways that people are thinking. And it's a good way to, if you're not comfortable watching Fox News, there are plenty of conservative, topics explored in art that you can familiarize yourself, because, we, as artists, we all have agendas, we all have messages we want to send out into the world, whether it be, through propaganda posters, or, hidden messages in our paintings, or whatever it is. We all are trying to communicate our opinion, what our validation of life is, or what we want to question. And the idea of the continual question of, like, is this right? Is this truth? Does this matter? How does this affect me? If we stop him from speaking or her from speaking, then when will they tell me to shut up? These are all extremely valuable conversations that we need to continually have, because I think people get really complacent. They're like, oh, the powers that be, they know what's going on. It's fine. We're going to be just fine. And it's like, no.
That's how we got Trump. We let Obama be a fucking militarist asshole. We stopped pushing Obama. He fucking he invaded Libya. It's a whole thing. Like, the foreign policy that we're gonna go back to right now is upsetting, because everybody on the left is like, oh, human rights, human rights. Yeah, like, what about the people we're droning? They're brown too. So anyway, we could keep going. We're at 2 hours. This is the longest episode I've done in a long time. So let's wrap it up. It was lovely talking to you and having a healthy discussion about different points of views. I'd love to have you back on at any time. And I didn't know that we were going to end there. Like, I was not even feeling politically angry today, but I'm glad that we went there. All right.
I am too. I think it's so important, because I don't think that we get to have that conversation nearly enough, and it's so
Yeah.
important. And it is important also to have the example of two people agreeing to disagree and
Yeah.
continually going, but this is my point, and this is your point, and this is your point,
Oh.
and tease this out and explain this and do that. I don't think Americans are very good at that. I think we get very uncomfortable when someone says, I disagree with you. They think those are fighting words. And I hope that if there's one thing that people could take out of this podcast, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and being able to create that trust space,
Yeah.
because it's
Well,
important to understand other people's opinions.
I think that there's a lot of people that agree a lot more than they realize. And I think that it's because the way that we've been sort of like if the discussion in this country was about class instead about race and gender and all of those things that like maybe trigger people, like if the argument was like, instead of like uh you know I mean, I understand why people say things like we need to focus on helping trans women, but what about like it? But the way to do that I think in the broader scheme of things is to just come up with universal programs, right? That would help everybody. For example, universal health insurance, right? And I think that slowly, even though the major part of the discourse is about the things that we, the focal point is about that, like, um, more and more people are starting to agree on that shit. Like, I think that a lot of Republicans are pro Medicare, like health insurance, Medicare for all, whatever the fuck you want to call it, even though it was being called socialist. So I think that one of the things that is never really spoken about is like how or at least in our artist community, is that how, you know, to be somewhat successful in the arts, like, I don't have anybody that's not at least been middle class at some point in their life, because there is something to the practice of being an artist. Like, to some degree, if I have a homeless artist on the podcast, it's a little exploitative, right? Because I'm not paying people here. So, but even within that, like, if I have some racial diversity or if I have queer people on, I'm still only representing from a certain economic standpoint and up, right? Because and that's a reality of this show, that like I would love to like figure out a way to do it where it's not exploitative. Maybe when I have money to pay people, I can do it. But that's something to be aware of as well. Like, constantly, like, um who are you, like, who do you talk to, like, what class are they in, who's in government, what class are they in? AOC went in at one class level, and she's already got the potential to be at a super different one, right? And you see her not fighting for Medicare for all anymore. So these are things that, like, I think there are a lot more things in common with a bigot and a trans person in a lower social economic class. Obviously, a white person that is going to have privileges that that the trans person is not going to have. But let's just go with two white trans people, like two white people right there, to even it out a little bit, right? If they're in the same economic class and we do something to help that class, it helps both of them. And I don't think that the person that's getting helped on this side is going to be upset at the person getting helped on this side if they're getting their own fucking help. So I think a lot of the MSNBC discourse, a lot of the Biden campaign is very much about leaning into those things, because they're not actually going to give us anything that is going to help people. Like, they're not going to appeal to our all they got is gay and we're not racist. Is we're pro gay and we're not racist, because everything else they do is pro corporate. Like, the bipartisan shit that gets passed in this country is terrifying. You should be scared when Republicans and Democrats agree. That's when it's terrifying.
I mean, that is absolutely true. No question. It is.
We do agree. We do agree. It's just,
oh, but many things we agree on.
we there's just a couple of things that we can work out. And I think that, like, if this conversation went on, we might realize that we haven't phrased it in a way that we can necessarily fully agree, right? So I want to acknowledge that too. But anyway,
but I so appreciate how refreshing it is to find someone who we aren't finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
In this discourse, there's I'm so over that. I'm so over that. I'm so over that. I'm like, I need a little. I want to walk away from conversations being like, I need to think about that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. I need to like go back and reread some stuff, or look at this article that you recommended, or follow this person on Twitter or what have you. I think those are really that's always a great thing to come out of any experience.
Yeah.
Is, oh, I need to think about this more because I hadn't thought about that. Great, cool, because I'm going to go back to my echo chamber and it's going to be just a circle jerk, and that's so boring. So boring.
I'm glad that the first woman to say circle on my podcast. Or first person to say circle jerk on my podcast was a woman. Thank you very much.
Thank
Uh,
you. I think we'll
all
just
right,
leave it right there.
we should stop. Yeah, we should stop at this point because at least now we're not even that disagreeing. Now we agree on how fun it is to disagree, and that's a good place to be.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. It's not
Well,
like
thank you.
Thanksgiving dinner at the family house. It's very
No,
different.
so much more fun. So much more fun. Well, I really look forward to coming back and talking with you
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
for
been an
sure.
absolute pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much. And I look forward to listening to your other podcasts and guests. So
Cool. Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm probably not going to listen to this again before I put it out. So just to be warned,
no,
just
it's
it's like
perfect the
it's
way
two
it is.
hours, and I'm like, oh man, my schedule this week, it's coming out on Monday. So
No, don't edit it. Just it's all there.
and
It's all
hey, and comment, be nice, comment in the YouTube comments if you enjoyed this conversation, you have some thoughts, fucking make a comment, leave a like, you know, and I'll try to respond to that. If you are a dick, I'm not, but
yeah, for sure. Oh, and yeah, also would you we also I would really love it if we could plug Laura
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Onsale.
sorry. Yeah. Well, let's. Do you have
So
stuff you
let's
want to plug?
recap. We want to plug Laura Onsell. We want to plug Peter Max Lawrence. We want to
Yeah.
plug Brian Stokel. We want to plug
I
either
wouldn't
one.
have plugged them again, but you're a very noble
But I
woman.
think but I think it's important because when they're mentioned and that's power. I just want everyone to get their just desserts and their shout outs. It's important.
Okay.
Please check out these artists. They're really
Hell, very
incredible.
good.
Not just
And they
because
have
they're my friends.
and they both
They're
have
great.
episodes. So go listen to the episodes.
Yes, exactly. Go and
I'm
listen
back
to
on
those
board with
episodes.
plugging them because now I plug
Yeah.
myself.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go have some lunch, and it's been a
And what
pleasure.
do you have anything to plug? Your
Oh yeah, so
morbid
I have
fascination at
in
morbid
Shelter
fascination.
Zoo, in Shelter Zoo on Instagram or inshelterzoo.com is the
Okay.
website, and just what animal are you? Make a mask out of whatever, take a selfie, and then send it to my website, and I will add you to my virtual zoo.
And
Simple
it's
as that.
egalitarian.
No
You
animal will be
submit.
refused.
No, yeah, you all have a shelter.
You all have shelter in my zoo. And oh, we've just expanded to a botanical garden. So if you want to make a plant mask, hit me up.
All
We'd
right.
love to have you. We have like 2 plants. So we need more plants. So if you feel like making a plant mask, that'd be awesome. So
Nice.
appreciate
All
it.
right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.